My name is Lisa Marchese Eames, and I'm chair of ASA. It's nice to see you all on this cloudy beginning of May, and I hope you had a nice weekend. Ellen, I'm going to ask you if you would take the roll call, please.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Trustee Doak. Trustee Kane.
I'm here, and it's very sunny here in Orono, Lisa. So you should really.
I'm sorry. Man.
Very sunny here today. I'm so sorry.
Trustee Ames.
Yes, here.
Trustee Irwin.
Here.
Has Trustee Gardner joined yet? Okay. Trustee McMahon.
Yes, here.
Trustee Mishu.
Here.
Trustee Cates.
Here.
Trustee Dobson.
There she is.
I am here.
Great, thank you. And I won't, Trustee Gardner. Okay, Trustee Doak.
Yes.
Great, we're all set.
Thank you, Ellen. May I have a motion for the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provision of 1 MRS section 405-6A to discuss the evaluation?
So moved. Second.
Let me just finish the personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, employment, and duties. And so I think Tim moved, and the second, Ellen, did you get the second on that?
Yes, I'm all set.
All right.
Trustee
Can you
Mishu.
take the roll, please?
Trustee Doak.
Yes.
Trustee Kane.
Yes.
Trustee Ames.
Yes.
Trustee Irwin.
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Trustee Mishu.
Yes.
Trustee Cates.
Yes.
Trustee Dobson.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Ellen, before we move, I just want to let you know that Trustee Gardner has joined.
Trustee Gardner, we'll
Yes.
get you on this.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
All right. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee will enter into executive session to discuss tenure issues. You should all have a prompt to join.
Harlan and Donna, you should have a prompt to join a separate breakout room.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure because I just hopped on what the breakout room was, so I didn't want to jump into something I wasn't familiar with.
Yes, that's what we do when we're in executive session. So go ahead and move over to that breakout room.
Okay, thank you.
Do I want to be in the video? Or do I just want to have my actual? Oh, they're doing executive session. No, she can come in.
Good morning again.
Trustee Eames, you're muted.
I apologize. Good morning again. I'd like to introduce the first agenda item and turn the meeting over to President Farini Mundy and John Violin. Tenure at the time of hire, the Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering.
Thank you. I bring to you today a proposal for your approval and transmittal to the Board of Trustees, a recommendation that Dr. Vijay Devabhatuni be awarded tenure at the rank of professor in our Department of Electrical Engineering, Electrical and Computer Engineering. Professor Devabhatuni is coming to us from Purdue University Northwest, where he has had an extraordinary record. And he will bring that to us here, both in research, in publication, in advising of doctoral students, and as a seasoned administrator. He will come to be chair of our Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. They undertook a full international search, and he rose to the top and has agreed to come. So this appointment, we believe, is appropriate with tenure and promotion or appointment at the rank of professor. He will be with us in electrical and computer engineering at a moment when we begin the work of the Harold Alfond Foundation grant and work to greatly increase our enrollments in this area, as well as to increase our external support in electrical and computer engineering, which is a major growing field within engineering. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, President Farini Mundi. Are there any questions or any discussion? Seeing none, I will
Madam Chair,
read.
I was just going to say, I think this
Ah,
is a really
thanks.
exciting, since, you know, I'm sure people are watching us. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the university and couldn't be more thrilled to support this hire.
Thank you, Emily.
I-
Any other?
I would like to also add that engineering has been something that we pride ourselves for years, and this is just a move to make it even better and pull Maine's University Engineering Department even to the forefront. So great work, and thank you.
Any other comments or thoughts? Well, let me echo the same thoughts. I will read the text of the proposed resolution that the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forward this item to the May 24th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the recommendations for tenure at the time of hire submitted by the University of Maine. The approval will take effect June 7th, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Kane? Do I have
Second,
a second by Trustee Doak? Ellen, would you take the roll, please?
Trustee Doak,
yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin,
Yes.
Trustee Gardner,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Dobson. Trustee Dobson,
Yeah, yes, sorry.
the motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen. Next, I'd like to turn the program over to Robert and John for academic program proposal of BS in Business Administration and Sports Management.
And I will turn it over to John and just offer my support of the program. The CAOC and my staff have discussed and feel very confident in this and think this is a step in the right direction for UMaine and its Division I athletes.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Chair Marchese. So yes, I'm actually very excited about this proposal as well. So we're proposing a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a major in sport management. So it's a collaborative degree actually with our UMaine athletics personnel who will teach courses alongside our business faculty. And just to give a little background on sport management programs in the US, they're essentially not meeting the current need for these professionals. So in 2019, as an example, Maine institutions conferred about 44, 45 degrees in sport management that year, but there were estimated about 400 current sport-related job postings in Maine. And if we look at overall New England in the region, there were about 800 sport management degrees that year with 12,000 current sport management related job postings. So there is a demand out there. And of course, University of Maine is home to Maine's only Division I collegiate athletic program with the recent gift of $90 million from the Alfond Foundation to really invest in UMaine athletic facilities and programs. You know, I think the addition of the sport management, collaborating with the University of Southern Maine will really be able to offer a world-class experience for our student athletes and others interested, you know, students to train in kind of the core business skills while kind of developing these, you know, industry-specific knowledges in partnership with the UMaine athletics. So we anticipate very strong student demand for this program. It'll have a very strong experiential education connection with professional opportunities. And so I think we're estimating about 160 students enrolled by 2025. So we're actually very excited for this proposal. And thank you for considering it.
Are there questions? Roger.
A couple, please. It sounds like a great idea, having read through it. Just a couple of questions. One of the memos, I think it was from you, John, talked about USM's program, current program, focusing on semi-professional / professional sport, while this new program would be oriented around NCAA Division I sports programs. Could you speak to that? Because it seems these programs oriented toward placing people in, for instance, in this case, into Division I sports programs, or the wider variety of sports management jobs that might be out there? And secondly, could you talk a little bit about what's going to happen differently in RNO from what happens currently in Southern Maine, and how those will work together? Because that was there was a lot of talk about that as well.
Yeah, Trustee Katz, thank you. So, and Janine can jump in as well on this. So essentially, there will be similarities. And so there, online courses, as an example, that USM may offer, students will have those as a chance for electives. We will provide opportunities, even in the Portland area and some of the Division I venues, for experiential learning with sport management students down at USM. So we really see this as a collaborative effort. Currently, as you heard, like 2019, 44, 45 students graduated, in the state of Maine. This will give us a chance to really up those numbers together. I see this as a collaborative venture. Just as an aside, my son graduated in sport management at the University of Florida about 12 years ago, and got right into a management program, as an example. So there is, even for more than a decade now, there's been a real demand in this area, and we can definitely increase these numbers here. I think with the Elfon gift, this big investment of $90 million here, we'll focus a lot on gender parity and gender equity in the athletic areas. And this sport management degree program will actually be a really great, strong recruitment tool for not only Division I athletes, but for those interested in being able to get involved in a program like this. And so there's distinctions. Again, us being the only Division I school offering athletics in the state, but there's certainly synergies that USM and UM will be able to do.
Thanks. Can I ask one follow-up? So yeah. If my son, would have loved this program, I'm sure, if it had been available, if he were going to college today and someone was asked to describe what's going to happen at RNO and what's going to happen what's going to continue to happen in Portland, and how are those two programs different, what would you tell them?
Well, I think ours will be focusing much more on the Division I athletics. They'll be working with the coaches here in a lot of the facilities that we offer here. And so I think that will be, and the expansion, we will be able to offer those as well to students down in Portland, and where USM students will be able to take advantage of, where Orono students might not be able to take advantage of.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Could I, Chair, could I just say one thing that I think is important for consideration on this?
Of course, Chancellor.
This is a major that is extremely popular with athletes, both at any division play. And we have been adversely impacted by not having that at a Division I school. Sorry about that. And so it makes a difference. And so we're trying to, it'll be an attraction for athletes to come to this Division I school. And I think there are about 400 athletes involved in at the university currently. So to give you numbers, it's a different experience that people are looking for, particularly coming as an athlete. Secondly, it is also widely recognized as a good degree for management, period. So it positions people to move in the management area.
Other comments? I look forward to hearing back from you all about the hopeful success of the sharing of curriculum. Goes to the heart of unified accreditation, and I'd love to hear how it's working after a couple of years, because it's an example of how it can be done well if it is done well. So thank you. I will read the text of the proposed resolution. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forward this item to the consent agenda at the May 24th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the creation of a Bachelor of Science in Business and Sports Management for the University of Maine. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ellen, would you take the roll, please?
Trustee Doak,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes.
trustee Gardner,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Cates,
Yes.
and trustee Dobson.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen. Now I will turn the program over to Janine and Robert.
And based on that prior conversation, I'll add a few things to this. The data science field, hopefully you all have heard, it is just absolutely exploding. The demand in Maine is particularly high, but across the country is high. There is similarities in this program and the other in terms of you've got an existing program at whereas sports management, you had an existing program at USM. That both provosts, Volin and Uzi, have worked together to, in this particular case, create distinctiveness in the curriculum. They looked for opportunities for overlap and where courses can be shared already. This group of faculty and one of our faculty reps to the board, Harland, is included in this group, work very well together and are looking to be collaborative. You'll note that the proposal does include a similar memo from the chancellor and I asking the university to put a finer pencil to how these programs can support each other across institutions. And I believe the institution has risen to the challenge and ensured that we're going into this with a unified approach. So super excited as a data science guy myself, or at least a wannabe geek, to see this expansion of our data science programs in Maine.
Thanks, Robert. I would just say I'm not a wannabe geek. I'm fully there, just in a different field. So I really appreciate that introduction. It is the case that Provost Volin and I have worked together with the faculty and administrators in these programs for, I guess, months at this point, to make sure that we are not swimming in each other's lanes, but that we are, whenever we can, finding those opportunities to collaborate. And in fact, I was talking with one of our data science faculty the other day, and he said, did you know that I'm actually on the advisory board for UMaine's data science group? And so our faculty are in structures already working together. So we've done a lot of work to bring this forward in a collaborative way, and to make sure that we're serving all of the students in the state. UMaine is serving students who want a fully online experience. USM, because of our location, with so many people who are working and who want some face-to-face experiences with us, we are looking to pull in that audience, the adult students who want to go part-time, who want to be in some face-to-face experience. We found that many of our adult students who are trying to break into a technical field can struggle online for the first time. And so we did want to offer a hybrid opportunity for these students to come back to the classroom. Often they're coming back after a break, and to give them time face-to-face with faculty. So I think data science is probably the single biggest, the field with the single biggest potential right now. I don't know of any field that's not thinking about how it will incorporate data science into its program. So, our history majors are being placed in data science internships now, something that we wouldn't have imagined 10 years ago. So I think Provost Vallon and I both see this as a place to invest, not just for data science proper now, but for most fields, for the future of most fields. So USM is capitalizing on our strengths, and I think UMaine and their program is capitalizing on their strengths. Their program is in close partnership with the School of Engineering, and ours is not. We're focusing more on public health, health informatics, geographic information systems, business, and also in cybersecurity. And both programs will be developing accelerated degrees for the other undergraduate majors in the system. For instance, UMA's undergraduate program in data science to come into our programs, whether students want the hybrid or whether they want the fully online experience. So I'm excited about this program. I think it's really where we need to be as a system. And the demand for these two programs is only going to increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Any questions or comments?
Chair?
Mark?
Yeah, a question. I think, Janine, you may have answered it. I was sitting thinking about if I were looking for an MS degree data science person, how would I separate the skill set, the one coming out of University of Maine and then versus USM? And I think you kind of touched on it. One is going to be more engineering based. Is that what I heard? And the other one is more business based? Or?
So if there is a document in our proposal that goes side by side and delineates the differences between the programs. And I think that's a really helpful, in fact, I'm using it right now as a cheat sheet, not being a data scientist. Right. But yeah, so UMaine's program is a collaboration among its computer information systems faculty, its engineers, and its biomedical faculty, its chemical engineering programs. USM is we have more expertise on our side in public health, health informatics, on the business side of data science and business analytics. And then we have really doubled down recently in cybersecurity and technology. And so that's another place where I think we will be building our capacity in the data science realm. But the first couple of pages of this proposal really give you chapter and verse on how the two programs are distinguished, not only in disciplinary foci, but in delivery modes and, and the different populations that we serve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Other questions? Jim?
Yes, good
morning. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Jim.
Yeah. I did. Jim,
okay.
And then Tim. Okay.
Couple questions. One relates to pathways for students around the system into this program in particular. I could ask the same question about UMaines, but let's focus on this one. So your thoughts on a broader sort of 4+1 pathway, perhaps, for students, and then obviously to be ready for that, they need access to some of these courses, some of the prerequisites to get into this program, even if they're not on the UMaine or the USM campus. And the other thing I'll note is that I had a tour over at the Rue Institute on Friday and got a deeper dive into what they're doing in the way of their master's degree programs, and of course they're very, very business focused. They're health focused, which is a lot what you're talking about, but they also have they've thought about how to get people who are not coming right out of college, but who've been in the marketplace for a long time and who now have a need for this kind of knowledge and skill, and how to sort of bridge them from wherever they are to where they're ready for this, and then get them into the master's program. That last point is really more about what the competition is up to, and where I think we need to be thinking going forward to open as many doors as possible into programs like this. But so I'll stop there and just congratulate you for bringing this forward, and ask if you could address that first question.
Yeah, Jim, I'd be glad to. And, just to the competition, I think we beat them on price point every time. But RU is in our backyard at USM, and we have to keep an eye on what they're doing. And I think, they have a lot of resources and they're doing some things well. So we are wise to keep an eye on them. I would say that what you're talking about, this group of people who want to maybe change their career, and they have a BA in English or a BA in sociology, and they've been working in a field, but they want to increase their earning power and get into a tech profession. This is exactly what our Step Up to STEM program is designed to help people do. And the Step Up to STEM program is part of the Dubiak Digital Center, and a result of Mike Dubiak's initial gift to us. Right now, we've only got the undergraduate portion of that designed and running, but there is a second portion of that coming that is intended to do exactly what you're talking about. Take someone who is a classics major undergrad and says, you know what, I'd like to try something different, and give that person it's really a mathematic kind of inoculation shot in the arm so they can get into the field. So that's top of our mind as we're continuing to raise money for the Dubiak Center and to get the graduate side of Step Up to STEM up and running.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I'm wondering if I could jump in just to make a few comments.
Yes, except that I had told Tim Doak that he could go next. Sorry. I'll call on you, Harlan, next.
Thank you, Chair. Jim asked, part of my question was pathway also, and I see this as something that you could be a mid-career person and want to go into and get some quality background. I don't think we can see any innovation in the future without data science, and somehow innovation, we do have a program in Orono around innovation. I mean, I don't care if you're a public school system, an insurance company, a medical field. Innovation can only happen when there's data science is really taking good, strong effect. So there isn't an organization in Maine that doesn't need data science. And I was just hoping that if someone wanted to be mid-career and have a pathway into it, there was a way to make it work so it wasn't so cumbersome, I guess. So I think part of Jim's question, you answered it. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Doak. And I wanted to say, since I know your background, the longer I'm provost at USM, the more I think that really the key to moving Maine's economy is middle school math education. So, that's where I'm starting to think as well. How do we really get the students to better math attainment before they're graduating from high school so they can take advantage of these programs?
We've even discussed in this district, 4th grade. Where are they at in 4th grade? And from 4th grade on, what can we do with them? Can they be accelerated? Do they need extra support? But definitely that leads itself into data sciences as being just good with numbers and math. But I really think innovation comes next too, because it really gives you that foundation to say, if we did this, this is what the data is telling us we could do, this could happen. So this is great. This is great for Maine, and it's a futuristic degrees that we need to start looking at. This is great work.
Thank you.
If I could just respond.
I've got to let Harlan go, and then I'll get to you.
You bet.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And first thing I want to do is thank, by the way, I am the, let's call it the interim director for the Data Science and Engineering graduate program at the University of Maine, and the graduate coordinator for all of the students. Right now we have a whole set of courses and actually some different master's degree credentials, which are all kind of supporting each other. One of them is a master's of master's degree in information systems, which is very closely aligned with this. All of these degrees, it's interesting because this data science one is very similar to, let's say, an MBA degree or a law degree, where we accept high-performing students from any disciplinary domain as long as they meet some minimum credentials. And in this case, yes, some statistics, some math that we would like to see them have before they walk in the door. But in many instances, we help out. Well, you've never had programming in your life? Okay, well, here is a graduate level programming course for designed specifically for you. So it's more of an accelerated type course. So I think this has huge growth. It's not like we're doing a specific computer science degree where you pretty much have to have a computer science undergraduate degree to go into this. In this data science area, I think there's a very large population. So I really want to thank the University of Southern Maine for collaborating with us in supporting our particular program, having some distance courses that students that are taking our distance one. Again, there's this cross collaboration possibility in these instances. So in our graduate program, I would say a few years ago, we had less than 20 students. Now we have, I don't know, must be 130. The last time I just count the numbers that were enrolled this semester in one of our programs are over 130 graduate students. And I think this has huge growth potential. So very supportive of the Southern Maine effort, as they have been supportive to our effort on this program as well.
Thank you, Harlan, for that. Now, Glenn, sorry to have cut you off.
No, it's perfect. I was just going to pick up on Trustee Doak's comments and Harlan's comments that we were looking at data from Burning Glass that showed that if a humanities major or a liberal arts major had simply 3 courses and something along the lines of STEM related, for example, data science or coding, statistics, it tripled their chances of being employed, fully employed within 90 days of graduation. So the impact that this can have, even in a very small doses, so to speak, can have a very strong impact on career performance.
If I could comment one more time, the nice thing about this degree is it was specifically designed for professional development for people from any domain, but as well on our particular campus. For instance, if you want to concentrate in artificial intelligence as your theory research domain, that is also possible within this data science and engineering curriculum. So not every student is going to come out with the same background or the same interests. They don't come in with the same background or interest, but it's serving a wide population here, from the theorist all the way down to the person that simply wants to find out more about, let's say, AI developments in health.
Thank you, Harlan. Other comments? I guess I just have a question for you, Janine. Based on Harlan's comments, I find it fascinating how you project the number of students anyway that you think you're going to have. You are on mute, but do you think 20 seems, based on Harlan's comments, pretty conservative for 2024? I just wondered if you could comment a little bit on your anticipated or projected enrollment.
I agree. Really, when we project enrollments, the deans work with our enrollment folks to make those projections. But we tend to be conservative in our projections, and we'd rather under project and overperform. And so, for the purposes of this document, we were trying to project enrollments against expenses. And for my part, I want to know that we could afford to hold this program if we got only 25 students, and we can. But I think you're right. I think our projections are probably too conservative. And I think if this program is marketed correctly, we can really attract far more than we've projected. So we're just being cautious and careful with our resources. But I'm also, we are redeploying resources at USM to make this program happen. And so, our investments will follow the enrollment and the needs of the state. So I anticipate this will overperform what we've projected, and then we'll reallocate further to support the program. So I hope your predictions are correct. I think they probably are.
Well, thank you. Before we go to a vote, does anyone else have anything they would like to add? All right, I'll read the text of the proposed resolution. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forward the item to the consent agenda at the May 24th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the creation of a Master's of Science in Data Science for the University of Southern Maine. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Emily. Second?
Second.
Second by Beth Dobson. Ellen, will you take the roll?
Certainly. Trustee Doak,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin,
Yes.
Trustee Gardner,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Dobson.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen. I'll now turn the agenda over to Ray Rice for Umfk academic restructuring.
And Chair Ray has graduation ceremonies today, so he was planning to come in at just before 10. If we could maybe do Deb, and hopefully he'll be here.
Absolutely. So I will turn the agenda for UMFK academic restructuring over to Deb Hedin.
Well, good morning, everybody. And thanks for the opportunity to share with you our proposal for an academic structure with 2 divisions and the reason behind that decision. So a little bit of background information on this proposal. Also, I might like to mention that Faculty Assembly on this campus approved this proposal on January 20th and has full support of the faculty. So just a little bit of history. In 2018-2019, the academic structure consisted of a president, vice president for academic affairs, and 4 division chairs who are faculty and members of AFM. Then in 2019-2020, UMFK transitioned to a president position that also had responsibilities to serve as the provost. A pilot academic structure was implemented that consisted of 2 academic divisions with dean positions. The dean positions are not AFM members, and that's really important because the deans have administrative and supervisory authority of faculty performance, evaluations, and decision-making responsibilities. The combination of the president and provost position has created a flat academic structure with limited due process for faculty. So the dean positions provide faculty with another level of faculty performance and evaluation feedback, as well as mentoring and ongoing support. Each division has 2 units with unit chairs. The projected budget. So the budget was already implemented in the budget 2019-2020 during the pilot process. And what that really meant was that the director of nursing division salary was increased to a dean position salary. A division chair salary was increased to a dean position salary. The vice president of academic affairs position was eliminated, and the president's salary had a slight increase due to adding the provost's responsibilities. Overall savings, approximately $53,000. There will be a review process. The deans will be evaluated by the president/provost and division faculty annually. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Chair?
Yes.
I would just add that President Rice and President Hedin work very closely together. Both are righting their ships as President Hedin dove in quickly in her first year working with her complete university to understand strengths and where they can move forward, but not doing so in isolation, working closely with Umfk and their counterparts to see where they can leverage strengths and so forth. You will see in the summer, the July meeting, that both President Rice and the Dean will come forward with a joint proposal for the rest of this restructure, which they will continue and or elaborate on the shared positions that they enjoy together. So this is sort of phase one of a complete restructuring of their campuses to I would say set them up for success, and hopefully President Rice, are you with us yet?
So Robert, if I may also add, currently we have approximately 10 positions that are shared across our campuses, which is pretty impressive to have that level of partnership going on currently with the goal of strengthening those positions and our collaborative work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll read the text of the proposed resolution. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the consent agenda at the May 24th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves and ratifies the UMFK academic restructuring proposal to go into effect June 1, 2021. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Beth Dobson, seconded by Emily Kane. Ellen, would you take the roll, please?
Certainly. Trustee Doak,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin,
Yes.
Trustee Gardner,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee Dobson.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen.
And Ray is here if you'd like to
Ray,
go.
okay, that's what I was just going to ask. Then we'll turn the agenda over to Ray, President Rice.
Thank you. My apologies. We just finished the first of 3 live ceremonies we're doing today for our graduates. So thank you for taking the time and for setting the schedule to allow me to get on here on the meeting here in a way that fits in between our presentations here at UMPI. So very pleased to put before you a proposal to add a 3rd academic unit. UMPI has 2 colleges. Currently, the Colleges of Professional Programs and the Colleges of Arts and Sciences. This would be establishing a 3rd unit, a 3rd college called the College of Degree Completion and Credentialing that focuses on our CBE work that we've been doing the last 4 years called the Your Pace programs. This also comes with the budgeting of a dean position, which we have had an executive director in that role with working within the 2 current colleges. Just a quick note on competency-based education. You may have seen some of the presentations we've done over the past 4 years at a couple of the BOT meetings about competency-based education. But this is a great opportunity for the University of Maine system, as UMPI is the only public institution in the Northeast within Netchie, our regional accreditor, that is accredited to deliver competency education. A lot of the institutions that do that work are ones that are well known, I know, to this board, such as SNU, perhaps the largest private institution doing this kind of work. Although UMPI actually has more programs in competency education than SNU does. Western Governors is perhaps the most well-known one out in the western part of the country, but there are now well over 70 institutions that are doing competency-based education. UMPI was one of the first 20 institutions in the country within what's called CBEN, the Competency-Based Education Network, to start offering such programming. And what this programming does is it kind of overturns the traditional paradigm of both curriculum and delivery. rather than thinking of the program in terms of credit hours, say 120 credit hours divided into 30 courses. It is, each curriculum is set forth in competency units, which are based upon very discrete learning outcomes. So say a program in business administration, which was our first program, has 120 learning outcomes that students complete. And the second, so the competency-based education program is engineered around outcomes, and then students test into those programs with prior learning or transfer credit from other institutions, and we match up directly by those learning outcomes what kind of credit they can get for their prior experience and prior course credit. And the second major difference, of course, is that students proceed at their own pace individually in these programs. So students can start a new module at any time in one of the 6 start dates across the year in which we offer the programming, and they can finish as many as they can within a subscription period. So that makes it a unique program in the University of Maine system in that regard. And one that we're looking to expand. Just a couple other comments about the program. As you can see on the document, the white paper that I provided for the Chancellor, is the program has seen significant growth over this time period, expanding from a little over 1,800 credit hours into, we project over 7,000 credit hours this year by the end of our summer 1 start date, in which it is now about 1/4 of all of the total headcount of my institution now is delivered through your pace programming. So as you can imagine, it has really gotten to the point where it needs to have its own formal administrative structure. And more importantly, that administrative structure, we are proposing that the dean position is a joint position, 2/3 of the University of Maine at Presque Isle overseeing our current programs and the programs that we have slotted to be added to the platform. But 1/3 of it is a direct report to the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs or his designee. And that is intended to develop CBE programming at the sister organizations across the University of Maine system, so that we will be able to expand that programming to institutions across the University of Maine system to really leverage greater resources that we have to continue to expand this programming to our demographic base. I would also point out that the program serves adult learners. The mean age, I believe, of our learners is about 40 or slightly over 40, and 70% of the people we serve are women. So it's a program that is really meeting the needs of very specific groups of individuals in the state of Maine. It is now starting to serve more and more people outside of the state of Maine, in part due to the efforts of academic partnerships. We're seeing a lot of people from the coast, from Florida, across the rest of New England. And this seems like a really excellent opportunity, not only to continue to expand Presque Isle's academic programming, which is frankly getting towards the limit of the number of academic programs we have in our portfolio that can be put into this sort of a platform. But as I said, really to expand this platform across the University of Maine system so it can continue to grow and be a major player in adult learners and degree completion, not only in the state of Maine, in which we know this is so important to achieve, but throughout New England and particularly across the United States. We really feel that this is a program that can compete significantly, not only with some of our sister private schools in Maine, but also national schools across the United States that are doing competency-based programming, such as the ones I mentioned earlier. Also, I can share it if you wish to. We did provide a 5-year projection for revenues, which showed that the overall revenue of the program is projected to be at 1.4 million for this year. It is expected to grow to 2.1 million by FY26. That is only taking into account current Presque Isle programming. So that does not take into account any new programmings that would be brought on board with sister institutions or even new programs added from Presque Isle. The cost at that same time is currently just a little over $500,000 right now. That will include with the added dean position, and those costs will grow to $783,000 by FY26. That still shows a growth of almost $500,000 if no other programs are added to this program. But the growth we've seen with the existing programs continues at about the pace that we're seeing right now over the last 2 years, which has grown significantly. So happy to take any questions about competency-based education and the individuals that is really targeted for, which is people that have started college. These are people that are generally in the non-traditional category in that regard, but were unable to finish college, and our plans for expanding this in partnership with the University of Maine. We just see this as a great opportunity under unified accreditation to continue to develop this kind of specialized accreditation that Netchie has granted UMPI to the entire University of Maine system.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions or comments? Yes, Roger.
Thank you, Lisa. A couple of questions about this. Number one, it sounds very exciting. The whole issue of how we're going to access those stranded learners has got to be critical. But I'm just trying to get my arms around this whole issue. Am I correct that, for instance, someone might be able to get credit, if you will, for life experiences that didn't necessarily come from an academic institution? For instance, if someone was trained as a medic in the university, in the military, that they could get credit, if you will, for that training, or at least some of it. Secondly, does it allow people who've had a great deal of life experiences in a particular area to just take an exam, and if they pass that competency-based exam, if you will, get credit for that? And third, what's the programming involved? That's where I didn't quite understand. If I'm right about the first two things, what programming flows from that?
You are correct about the first two things. I say that reductively just to give you two easy yeses to your first two questions, Trustee Katz. Particularly with the first, in response to your first question, we use the prior learning mechanisms that are in place for the entire University of Maine system. What we do slightly differently than you would if you were in a traditional program is we do a review of those prior learning experiences, including any transfer credit, up front when a student comes into the program, rather than a student having to request that happening. So that, and then because we've associated everything with very specific learning outcomes at a very granular level with rubrics illustrating the proficiency achievement at each level of those outcomes, we can then help that student recognize where that, to get to your question number two, where their lived experiences, their professional experiences, even if they are not in a collegiate situation, can actually match those learning outcomes. And then also we have, as our sister institutions do, we partake of various national placement examinations, and we also have challenge examinations that we did with traditional, I would call it traditional platforms. But because each unit within a competency unit has a very specific final examination that students have to achieve, which is then evaluated through a very detailed rubric system, students can take that final assessment as a sort of challenge examination. So it makes challenge examinations much simpler to do because the entire curriculum is set up that way from the very start. It's reverse engineered from the work you have to do to show that you're proficient at the end of a unit. That allows us then, if a student say, worked 10 years in an HR department and wants credit for an HR unit could take that challenge examination and show that they actually have those competencies. So yes, that's for your first two. And then your third, this is a completely asynchronous platform. So we actually use a third party that provides the learning platform for students, which is accessed through their general maine.edu account, but it goes directly into this completely self-contained platform in which their subscription fee of $1,400 a semester, and there's six subscription cycles throughout the year, pays for everything. So all that $1,400 pays for what you would think of as all the textbooks, all of those kind of resources are all within that single platform, and provided directly to students in that regard. So students, as long as they have any sort of internet access, can access every function of the program from wherever they're accessing that. So we have students right now, for instance, in the armed forces that are in Vietnam, in Europe, that are accessing the program at various times of the day, completely independently of any of the work that is happening at the institution here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
President Rice, could I chime in with just a little extra piece about CBE?
Sure. Certainly, seeing as Carolyn served as the executive director of the program until somebody asked her to go work for the University of Maine system, more than happy to have her chime in.
Not sorry.
You did a fantastic job explaining CBE, but one thing I think that it's important to note, and some who aren't familiar with it may not understand, is that the competencies that are developed by the full-time faculty that teach those courses in the more traditional setting. So they actually take, so if, for instance, if we're talking about a Principles of Accounting 1 course, they actually would take the same learning outcomes as the accounting course that a traditional age student sitting in the classroom or a more traditional online learner would be participating in that same type of an outcome-based course. And that's what the competencies are based around. So at the same time, when the faculty member is developing the content, they also have built into the platform several opportunities for student and faculty interaction. So it is asynchronous, as Ray said, that the student can work along at their own pace, but that doesn't mean that they aren't having really robust interaction with the faculty members, feedback from a faculty member on their work, and guidance on their movement and progression through the competency. So I do think that some misunderstand, because it is so self-paced, that there isn't any real faculty involvement in the work, and there is, and that's something that we've worked out with Netchie and have been accredited to do. So it just adds a little bit more to the description of that competency environment. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's a good point. And to that point, we worked with Netchie to ensure we had that structure in place. We're not an experimental site like some other institutions were allowed to be under the Department of Education, in which there is no faculty interaction, specifically because we wanted to be able to award financial aid. So that mandates that we have substantive faculty interaction that we're able to display both to Netchie and to federal accreditors. So we built the curriculum in that regard. I actually teach 2 of the units, including one of the Masters of Organizational Leadership units, so I can attest to how frequently at any point in 24 hours students are doing work and asking questions in that regard. So.
Thank you both. David?
Ray, probably an unfair question, but you said the average age was about 40. What's the average number of credits, or whatever word we're using to describe it, that people are granted as they come into the program? So in terms of trying to get a handle on the program, is this, most people are coming in with the equivalent of 60 credits, so they're being granted 2 years of a 4-year degree? Is it up to 3 years? Do we have a handle on what the average is?
Yes, I think Carolyn can give you even a more specific answer to that, but I have seen students coming in with about 90 credits is usually about the top, because obviously we have to honor the credits that are mandatory from an institution based upon Netchie's accreditation, which is about 30 we have to deliver. And I've seen students with as few as, I would say, in the 20s, but it's much closer to 60. But I know Carolyn worked up some of those numbers specifically when she was executive director.
Yeah, and Ray was right again, but typically the students come in, when the program was designed, there was initially a set minimum that they had to have at least 30 credit hours. And so that's why we did see in the beginning more towards the 60 credit hour range. They usually had something close to an associate's degree. We did reduce that amount because we found there is a big number of students, especially in the Maine population, that may have gone for one semester and had 15 to maybe 21 credit hours, but did not complete a full year. And we didn't want to leave them out of the mix. But what is done, as Ray mentioned at the beginning, when we look at their prior learning, PLA, or prior learning assessment, allows for an additional 30 credit hours to be granted when they are bringing in their transfer credits. So for those students who are coming in with 30 to 60 credit hours, we're able to then look at their prior learning and see if there are any credits that can be assessed. And that oftentimes gets them closer to the between 60 and 90 mark for bringing in their transfer credits.
So, and in a very short answer to Trustee McMahon's not unfair question, yeah, we frequently, like I would say the number of students we see completing in a year has accelerated dramatically in the past 2 years, and those are virtually all your PACE students. A great example of that is our history program is graduating 10 graduates this year, which is the most in a decade, and half of them are students from the CBE program that finished just this year alone.
Jim.
Yes, thank you. President Rice, I'm curious to know if you have a sense of where competency-based education, what its future looks like for the more traditional college student coming out of public school. And I ask that because, you know, it seems to me there was kind of a nascent movement toward bringing competency-based education into the K-12 system, which kind of went out with the tide a few years ago, never really gained traction. I don't have a point one way or the other about whether that's good or bad or why, but I'm just curious to know if the pathway that gets you to competency-based education is not based on that. Do we have a future in Maine where that model will, do you think, have any growth potential for traditional age college students?
The short answer to that is yes. I think it really depends, though, upon the experiences of those individuals. We try, and it was the basis of our programming, was really to separate this from first-time learners, first-time full-time learners in particular, and those in a continuing situation. I can say, because I'm on the board of directors of CBEN now, I hold, along with a community college president from Wisconsin, we're the two public education individuals on the CBEN board. And there is work in as far down as 8th grade competency education being presented to students that they can take at their own pace, particularly in modules in the STEM area. If you think of computer programming, you think of data science, there's a lot of work being done there, so students can progress at their own pace and learn those kind of skills and content that particularly, say, rural schools or even urban schools that do not have the faculty and skills to provide for students in that regard are doing it. And also in ESL situations, it is being used for new Americans throughout the country. Not aware of that level happening in the state of Maine yet, but I think there's obvious opportunities for that, particularly as a way to augment the traditional education that happens in a say 8 through 12 experience. So I do expect you will see more and more opportunities for this kind of competency-based learning that will end in a certificate of some form or another for students coming out of high school that will augment their diploma, and that we will then have to consider about how we recognize that officially in higher education. So I think students will get more and more used to this kind of learning environment, particularly after COVID-19, where distance education is just an expected form, an expected option for the majority of our students now.
Okay, thank you. It seems that as a system try to look ahead 5 or 10 years to what higher ed generally is going to look like, that this could be a really significant element. It already is a significant element for Umfk, and could be a significant element for the whole system, for at least a segment of the market. I get the sense, though, it's unclear whether that will penetrate into how far that will penetrate into the more traditional pathway from high school to college full-time learner market. And I think it will be interesting to see whether, how much that develops, and whether this will offer us a kind of a competitive advantage if that does take place.
I could add to that a year or two ago, Umfk did take, as a slight pilot project, occasionally there might be a junior or senior who, in the traditional program, who for some reason may have gotten out of step with their advising, and they're getting ready to graduate, and there's a course that they need that isn't offered on the schedule. So we typically would then, pair that person up with the faculty, and they would have some sort of a one-on-one independent or directed study to be able to keep them on track for graduation. So a year or so ago, Umfk did a pilot where they did offer through the CBE competency model some of those directed study opportunities to a couple of those juniors and seniors. And I will say they did exceptionally well. Their scores and their work in the competencies were fantastic. They appreciated the model. They did really well with it. It was guided by the faculty member. So that's a very small snippet, but that group of students, and again, they were towards the end of their college career, so they had some of that experience behind them, but they did very well.
I also think you can use it towards the beginning of their career, particularly, there's so much ongoing discussion of quantitative reasoning, mathematics, right? To put students into a self-paced competency unit, say the summer before they start their fall semester, or even contemporaneously with coursework that they're taking in their fall semester. This gives us an opportunity to really pinpoint the competencies they need, so they don't have to retake an entire course, when perhaps really what they need to know is a further understanding of probability and statistics in a specific way for their discipline. So that's another potential advantage for helping students that have some deficit in skills coming in. If we can identify that, you can identify very specific competency units.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will read the text of the. Was there a question? Is there a question? No? Okay. The text of the proposed resolution that the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forward this item to the consent agenda at the May 24, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves and ratifies the UMPI academic restructuring proposal to go into effect July 1, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Tim, second.
Second.
By Mark. Ellen, would you please take the roll?
Certainly. Trustee Doak.
Yes.
Trustee Kane.
Yes.
Trustee Ames.
Yes.
Trustee Irwin.
Yes.
Trustee Gardner.
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Trustee Mishu.
Yes.
Trustee Cates.
Yes.
Trustee Dobson.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen. And thank you for that discussion and that presentation. At this time, I'll turn the agenda over to Jeff St. John for Unified Catalog Update.
I think he's trying to find his mute button. Yeah.
There we go. All those years of higher education. Thank you, Trustee Eames. Appreciate the chance to update the group. Unified Catalog. So thanks chiefly to the Chancellor's spring tour of the campuses. I've had an opportunity to speak with faculty, at least some faculty and staff on all of our campuses, and most recently at the law school about the Unified Catalog initiative. Also had opportunities on 2 previous occasions to meet with faculty senates at the invitation of their heads through the Faculty Governance Council, and one more coming up later this week. I'll be meeting with UMaine's Faculty Senate to talk about Unified Catalog. As the trustees may recall, we really have 3 goals for this initiative on 2 different timelines. The first goal is to bring all of our undergraduate and graduate course offerings together in one place and make them visible and searchable by September of 2022. We aren't merging or lumping distinct catalogs together. We're not changing the academic oversight of catalogs, and we're not actively seeking to direct students to take some number of courses at an institution other than their home institution. But what we are trying to do in the spirit of unified accreditation is to make possible for all of our students to access in one place, see and search in one place all of our offerings, which we believe may have benefits for time to degree, for students moving successfully through their undergraduate programs in instances where they might need or want a course not offered in the right sequence or in the right semester at their home institution that's available somewhere else. We also think this will provide a further springboard for faculty collaborations across our institutions as faculty and professional advisors are able to see the full portfolio of our offerings in a way that's more visible and accessible than it is right now. We've discussed Unified Catalog previously, in addition with faculty. We've discussed it with the presidents, with our provosts, with the Faculty Governance Council, with several other groups. The project team for the Unified Catalog work will convene later this month for a kickoff. Robert Placido and I will work with registrars, financial aid directors, check in with professional advising staff and others over the summer to get a sense of how best to optimize what is essentially a greatly improved course search functionality within Main Street for this initiative. And then in the fall, the project team will begin to meet regularly. And at that time, we will also be seeking significant and regular input and guidance from faculty on all of our campuses about the work that we need to do. As the Chancellor and I have shared in these meetings as part of the spring visits, there are a number of decision points along the way to optimizing the catalog search functionality. And we need and want guidance from our faculty about those decisions, in addition to their registrars and their financial aid directors and professional advising staff. So that's the Unified Catalog. That's goal number 1 and timeline number 1, really by September of 2022 to achieve that piece of it. The second and third goals can be stated briefly, and they are on the same timeline, of a different timeline, but the same between the 2 of them. As part of the repaving Main Street project that IT and functional offices throughout the system are preparing to engage in, we will be seeking to eliminate barriers found in Main Street to student activity and barriers found in Main Street to faculty activity, particularly with respect to students who take classes on more than one campus and are trying to transfer courses back into their home institution, and particularly for faculty who are active in a multi-university academic partnership or program who are seeking to do business or need to do business with colleagues and with students on more than one campus. That work in fundamentally improving Main Street and allowing data to flow better on Main Street between and among our institutions will be multi-stage and multi-year. but it will get underway concurrently with the work that we'll be doing on the Unified Catalog initiative. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about Unified Catalog, anything I just shared.
Lisa,
Yes, go ahead, Roger.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff presented to those of us who went through the orientation a few weeks ago, which I really appreciate. So right now, if a student at the University of Maine wants to find out what courses are available, for instance, if you at Farmington, how do they navigate through that? Do they have to go to a separate website and look up separate course materials, or how does that work?
We currently, it's a great question. We currently have a course search capacity in Main Street, but I think the most diplomatic way to describe it is not optimal at present. It doesn't function as readily as we would like it to, and it visually doesn't help students access and see other courses and readily understand who they're being delivered by and in what modality and what they're all about as quickly and simply as we would like them to. So really what we're trying to do is showcase the work that faculty do in delivering their courses on all of our campuses and make those courses much more readily accessible and visible to all students on all campuses and to faculty, professional advisors, registrars, really anybody who does business inside of Main Street.
So could that RNO student now go to the Farmington site, for instance, and get some pretty quick access to Farmington courses, but they'd have to go to each of the different universities to do that?
They can go through Main Street. They could go, if they wanted to one of the other institutions' websites and then drill down to individual pages from there looking for specific courses, course sequences, or whole programs of study. What we're trying to produce is a much improved version of one-stop shopping for students, again, and for faculty and for everybody else who's active in Main Street. How quickly can you see it, search it, understand where it's coming from, understand the content of the courses that you're looking at from other institutions, and figure out whether or if they'd be serviceable for something you're trying to do in your own academic program.
Okay, thanks. And maybe it'd be helpful if you could share, because I asked you back then why it was such a big project, why it was going to take until September of next year to have this out. And you explained it, and maybe it'd be helpful if you could do that for the group.
A couple of the technical steps are relatively straightforward. The way that we hang out the actual shingle and the way that we make it as searchable in a way that is simplest and most effective, we really want faculty and student input on those pieces of it. So the things that are being done technically behind the scenes, I won't be doing those things myself. Robert Placido and I won't be doing those things. We'll be working in partnership with IT, but in the way that we depict what's available, in the way that we organize what's available, in how search results come in and what students and faculty see, we want that to be as user-friendly as possible for the specific needs and purposes of our students and our faculty. That's where we want their input on how to make it the best we can make it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank the Chancellor for driving this issue and Jeff for picking up this ball and running with it. I don't know how many know that it's been the public policy of the state, higher education public policy codified in Title 20A, that there be both a uniform course numbering and uniform course description system since at least 1991. It actually goes back to 1981. The statute's been amended a few times. So we're now 40 years from when the legislature said to do this. It's obvious how overdue this is, but I think it's really important that we get this done. And I think it's a testament to the the traction that the whole notion of a unified enterprise with individual campuses, the traction that that's getting, that this is finally moving forward and that it's going to be successful. And I just want to thank leadership for making sure that this happens.
Excellent point. Thank you, Jim. Other comments? All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for that presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I will turn the agenda over to Carolyn Dorsey for Faculty Governance Council update.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. And for those new to the committee, I was going to introduce myself, but I guess reintroduce because I spoke a bit out of turn earlier. My name is Carolyn Dorsey, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. And as part of my role in the Academic Affairs Office, I support the work of the University of Maine System Faculty Governance Council. So I wanted to just give you a brief update on their work today. As part of the proposal to Netchie seeking unified accreditation, UMS discussed creating a system-wide faculty governance body to ensure that the faculty voice was heard often and early in the system work. So in early 2020, the Chancellor brought together representatives from each of the existing campus faculty bodies. He actually selected the chair or a president of each of those bodies to come and talk with him and other folks from the system office to begin to think about what this group would look like and how it would function. So over the past year, that group has been meeting regularly. They've developed a really robust channel of communication between the campus level faculty bodies and the system, various offices at the system level. They've also been working to create a charter, which included establishing a composition for the group and a charge. And all of that was done in concert with their faculty bodies from their respective campuses. So they would meet as a group, discuss how they believe this should be comprised and the type of work and activities that should take place at this committee level. And then they would bring it back to each one of their faculty bodies for discussion, for feedback, and then again, meet as a group to vote and accept what would look like. So composition does include equal representation from all of the campuses in the law school. So there are a few representing each of those campus bodies. And more recently, they have actually begun working on what I would refer to as sort of the committee business. And they've started working on behalf or with the VCAA's office, looking at the policies and procedures and practices around academic affairs related initiatives, specifically around those areas of multi-campus academic collaboration. And they've also been working with Jeff St. John and others to pull together some writing for pieces of the required Netchie reporting. So they've really gotten into a good groove with meeting, with getting feedback from all of the different constituents and stakeholders at their campuses and working together as a system group to offer that faculty voice in the work that we do. So that's really a very quick update, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and then see if there's any additional detail that you may like or any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
And we'll turn back to Jeff for a unified accreditation update.
Thank you, Trustee Eames. Two updates for the committee today on two somewhat related subjects. The first is that our visit by a two-person Netchie appointed team is coming up next week. They'll be with us virtually next Tuesday and Wednesday, May 11 and 12. As many of you know, there are two purposes for this visit. Our responsibility is to update Netchie through this team on our progress in implementing unified accreditation. Secondly, as part of the visit, they'll be meeting with President Rice, faculty and students from Umfk, from the CBE programs that you just heard an update on to gauge their ongoing success in their work. This team will meet over the 2-day period with 13 groups. That includes the Chancellor and UMS senior staff, presidents and provosts as part of a large President's Council meeting, with Vice Chancellor Lowe and his finance and university service leaders team, with campus accreditation officers, with trustees Irwin, Eames, and Donnelly in their board leadership roles, and with staff, students, and faculty. There are actually 4 faculty-focused meetings built into the 2-day visit. So our 2 guests will have a chance to speak with faculty in a number of different contexts. We will use the feedback from the visiting team and from Netchie following their visit really in 2 key ways. The first is to strengthen our ongoing work in unified accreditation and in Umfk's CBE programming. Secondly, however, we'll use their feedback to further sharpen the focus of our self-study, which we will owe to a different visiting team and to Netchie, probably late summer of 2022 in advance of our fall 2022 comprehensive evaluation. We already have a prior letter from Netchie identifying several areas of focus for the self-study, but this report responding to the visit that they're making next week will provide additional guidance for us, additional amplification of areas that Netchie is interested in seeing us be responsive to in the self-study. And that will help us. The progress report that we submitted in advance of next week's visit was about 19 pages long. The narrative report we need to write for the comprehensive evaluation self-study will be 100 pages long, and we'll be addressing a whole range of subjects across all of the Netchie standards for accreditation. In addition to the numerous faculty meetings, I do just want to say one word about student meetings. We are very specifically and actively recruiting students to participate in 2 meetings as part of this visit. With help from President Rice and his CBE faculty, we have a group of Umfk CBE students from 5 different undergraduate programs who will be meeting with this team. Now, I hesitate to say too many nice things about President Rice. I don't want to establish a baseline for future praise, but he's done a fantastic job in helping us recruit students and faculty for this purpose. And secondly, with help from student life leaders on all of our campuses, we are actively recruiting students to participate in an open meeting for students system-wide. Given the timing of the visit, post-commencement, and given the subject accreditation, if you don't recruit, no one will show up for a meeting about accreditation, which students probably know very little about, right after they've either graduated and are leaving or have finished for the year and are leaving. So with thanks to the presidents and their student life leaders, we will have a group of students who are engaged, have some background, and are able to speak with the review team. And then my second update is very brief. We will be filing in early June our first annual report for Netchie under unified accreditation. In addition to this being the first time we file one report instead of individual reports for all of our institutions, the reporting form and structure have both changed radically this year. Netchie is using a new institutional reporting form and a new portal for online submission of the annual report form. So this is definitely unified accreditation in action. We are establishing the way that we will tell our empirical story about ourselves under the unified model for the first time in a model that's also different for Netchie in the ways I just described. So we will be working directly with system IR staff and with through the provosts with IR staff on the campuses to make sure that all the data that we bring forward for inclusion in our annual report is accurate and reflects the things that are distinctive about our institutions. So Trustee Eames, those are my 2 updates, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Emily.
Thanks, Jeff. That was a great presentation. It's clear there's a lot going into this between the visits and the self-study and all of that. And I think it doesn't have to be today, but I definitely would like to understand more about what goes into a self-study and what we're going to be looking at compiling all of the factors. And perhaps after you have this visit, that might be a better time for that conversation, because it would be interesting to understand what they're seeing, what they're asking for, the kinds of questions that they're asking during these visits, the kind of feedback that you all are getting. But I know I'd like to learn more about what's involved in a self-study, what the work of it is, the measures they're looking at, and what happens with the self-study after it's completed, right? Is hopefully it's not just a report for the sake of doing a report, but rather something that is a guiding document. So I just wanted to make it seem like a good time to speak up about that.
I would be happy to share that with you. And I believe that Jim Thalen and I will be sharing a unified accreditation update at the full board meeting on the 24th. If that's an appropriate context for sharing a little more about
That
what
works.
the study process entails, I'd be happy to do that. The key takeaway is that my hair is already gray, Emily, here and here. It will be probably snow white by September of 2022.
Jeff, I've known you a very long time, and I think I met you the first week you came to campus. I remember, but I think, it's just a sign you've been working hard. Let's just say that. I think that it's clear the self-study is taking up a lot of resources and time, and it's also clear it's very important. So anything you can do when you do that presentation to help us understand what's involved, how the information is used, it would be very helpful.
I would be happy to take you behind the curtain and explain exactly what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will turn the agenda over to Robert Placido with a student health insurance update.
Thank you, Chair. And Emily, what a great idea. I can see in the future that there are 9 standards currently in the Netchie requirements. Each are critical, and they all have their own flavors and elements and issues for us to address. And so they're also what we're all trying to achieve together too. So I think it could be informative to strategic planning on the board and just the way of thinking in the future. And so wonderful idea. So I'll definitely get with Jeff and others, and we'll think about a path forward. Maybe we can do a standard or 2 per ASA to cover in more depth, but he could give you an overview soon. So good afternoon, everyone. In the fall of 2019, the University of Maine system engaged in an RFP for student health insurance. You actually heard me talk about this prior to us doing this RFP and engaging. We had we've been offering health insurance for full-time students, but prices were rising and the coverage that we were able to offer was being reduced over time. The insurance market was also steering towards mandated models to help reduce costs, so we had to explore all this. So we completed the RFP process. We awarded a new contract and implemented a mandatory student health insurance plan last fall for our full-time students, undergrads. So I say mandatory, but students with existing insurance had the opportunity to submit proof of insurance and waive the coverage. The insurance plan that we were able to secure through the RFP was good in what it covered, and it temporarily held down the cost for our students. However, the students and parents were very unhappy, to put it mildly. Administrators, presidents, and the system office received many complaints. Students who were most vulnerable were impacted the most, as these students are generally the ones without insurance. Students told us that they had more affordable options, that this wasn't our place to make them have insurance. They often reduced their credit hours to go part-time so they wouldn't have to prove that they had insurance, and those that ended up getting the insurance had difficulty paying their bills. As just one example, received an email recently titled "Shameful Student Health Insurance Policy" from an unhappy parent. He explained in great detail how upset he was with this practice. Both his kids go to UM. They have great pride in the university. His email ended with this statement, and I quote, "This is beneath such a fine university." So we listened and reacted to all these concerns. During the fall, we tried to improve and fix problems with the vendor waiver system. We made other adjustments, but it just wasn't good enough. Our committee was formed to look for other options. Our review showed that of our nearly 30,000 students, only about 2,400 students enrolled in the insurance plan. And over 1,000 of those were automatically enrolled because they didn't submit a waiver that was accepted. With so few students using the insurance, we decided to eliminate the mandatory plan moving forward. Of course, there are still students who need our help to get insurance. To this end, the University of Maine system partnered with the state for assistance in getting those students insured. The state provided us with advisors called navigators. These navigators will assist students with finding a public marketplace plan based on their individual needs. And as an additional benefit, the navigators can assist these students with other social service connections. With fewer and fewer students needing the insurance plans we can offer, the rates and coverage will soon be completely unaffordable. However, we are exploring options to try to continue offering a voluntary plan. To be clear, there are certain categories of students that we will continue to provide our regular options, for example, graduate assistants, international students, and accidental coverage for athletes. Our goal is to be responsive to the many, provide the service to the few who need our help, and to leverage partnerships to use our resources most effectively. Dan Demerit would also like to offer an update on our marketing and communication strategy for this change.
Thank you, Robert. We are preparing to communicate to students currently enrolled in the student health insurance program with the options that will be available to them. The current policy runs through the end of July 2021, and to provide a very strong connection to those who choose voluntary options to work with the navigators and talk about the importance of maintaining health insurance, but also the other resources that are public and private resources that are available off our campuses to help provide students with financial stability, the foundation for which is important to student success.
Robert, could I
Sure.
raise a concern? I understand why the system has chosen to go in this direction, and I've expressed my views at the CAOC. I have two concerns. One is our undocumented students and how those students would be able to work with the state. And so with more students coming in who might be refugees, asylum seekers, who aren't qualified for Title IV aid in any event, I do have concerns that this could fall on some of our most underserved students most heavily. And then second, I have worries about students who don't have health insurance living in the residence halls and being our responsibility for transport in the event of emergency. So I want to raise those concerns because I understand the decision that was made, but I feel like it's one step on the path, and we need to think about how this will fall on all students, even if they are not in the majority. Thank you.
Trish.
Good morning. Thank you. I had a call from Dan, I guess at the Chancellor's request on Friday about this issue. And I want to raise to the committee to contemplate how much this could provoke reaction like we saw at Retiree Health. It's clearly not immediately and directly like that, but it's close enough that I think it raises caution. And to the earlier point, I obviously am a fan of doing everything we can to get people covered. when they're sick, they need coverage, but encouraging it instead of a mandate is certainly an option. When you eliminate the mandate, though, the current coverage plan, the Anthem plan that's current coverage, the premiums go up. So that's the result of the policy for those people who need it and choose it. So I think the question for us is, there will be uninsured people who want coverage, and I think giving them more options to the CAP agency makes lots of sense. We do mandate coverage for allied health professions, athletes, aeronautics. There are people that we still will mandate coverage for. And I'm concerned about the optics here, about how we make this transition. While the Anthem plan will be very expensive, it still is the plan people have come to rely on and may need. If only those people who need the coverage get the coverage, the cost will go up. So I know Gretchen and others were looking at whether it could be transitioned in. But I think we want to think hard about the optics here and the timing, particularly given last week in the legislature, we had a bill that we testified against to put faculty members and staff on the board. And much of the testimony did talk about the retiree health issue, our insensitivity to retirees. So I think here we need to think about whether we can continue to offer the Anthem as an option, the Anthem plan as an option, expensive though it is. So we're not disrupting and not recreating something that looks like retiree health, whether or not it is, to continue to offer that and then offer the cap options as well. And I think given the legislature's current debate, given the need for speed here, given that the plan eliminates on July 30th, I don't think we should be sending out something that says, hi, your health coverage ends July 30th. And Dan and I have been working on some language, so it doesn't quite say that. But I just raised for the committee concerns about how we do this, how not to provoke the discussion that we had with retiree health, which is relatively calmed, keep people whole and keep them an option. And I think we're waiting to hear about Anthem.
I have a couple of questions.
Emily?
How many students are we talking about that are currently on the coverage that we would be ending it for or transitioning?
Well, to be clear, the coverage would always have ended annually and they have to re-enroll. It's an annual plan, but there's 2,400 in our numbers are around 1,000 that actually signed up for the plan. The others were automatically enrolled because they didn't submit a waiver.
And how many people complained?
I don't have those numbers other than the ones that made it all the way up to the system in the 50s.
And I think, Emily, to your point, the question for me is that auto enrollment. Those people who need it and want it and expect it think they're just going to get automatically enrolled. So this new note will say, nope, you've got to do something proactively.
Well, there wasn't ever an auto enrollment. It was only, they were only auto enrolled because they weren't waived. Does that make sense? So every year they would have had to answer the question.
Presumably some communication went out that said, unless you submit a waiver, you are going to be enrolled, correct? Right. So correct. I mean, if that were me, I'd be like, great, they're going to take care of it, right? If I'm a student, that theoretically could. So it isn't necessarily an assumption we can make that they didn't opt in. If they knew that by not putting in a waiver, they were going to be signed up, that in and of itself could be viewed as a version of an opt-in, right?
Yes. Only anecdotally through the complaints we got were the people who were automatically opted in said, why did I get this bill?
Right.
And a subsequent question then is for people who, so I guess, I'm concerned this is an overreaction, and I'm wondering if there's some other version of a reaction that for the people who didn't submit a waiver but didn't want coverage could somehow get out of the coverage. I guess that's what my concern is. My concern is we're potentially unenrolling more than 2,000 people from insurance in a way that is not consistent with how they got on it in the first place. It feels like it doesn't feel like an equal reaction. I'm trying to, and I agree with everything Trish said about the concerns. insurance feels very important, particularly for young people who often don't think they need it, right? And that's sort of what I'm struggling with, whether or not this is too extreme a reaction and if there's some other middle ground.
Is it, I'm not sure. Is it clear that we're still going to provide the students who need insurance with an option?
Yes, it is. I think the issue is what is are we going to make sure we actually check in with every single one of them to say, do you really want this? Are you sure you want this? Are you sure you don't want this? I guess I'm concerned. It feels like there's the automatic bit of it here that could have a counter reaction, that the automatic opt-in provided more coverage or an automatic opt-out.
And I think, Robert, oh, sorry. The point here is where it is so reminiscent of the retiree health benefit, because we can't guarantee that it's the same kind of coverage at the same cost, the same drugs that are in the formulary. So, we can't be, I think, too quick to say, not to worry, there's another plan. That's exactly what got us in trouble with the retiree health folks.
So on that point, we were hopeful that we would have about 5,000 students participate, and that was sort of where they estimated the costs. And so with so few students participating, the plan will be reduced, the cost will go up. So it's sort of a death spiral for us to be able to do this unless we can get into an option where there's more people participating, which would be, and right now the public options are competitive to what we would be able to offer if we continue to go down this path and it's fewer and fewer students participating. I mean, that's just how insurance works.
Right. And I think that's why an optional year and what Gretchen was trying to pursue. And I think the cap options that were listed on the proposal, the dollar figures, you can't assume an individual's income if they're individuals applying for exchange coverage. There are some great discounts if you have low income, and it's really a great option, good coverage, low cost. However, if these people are on their parents, they're taken as tax deductions on their parents' plan, then the family income has to be the eligibility determination, and that might make coverage quite expensive. So I think we just don't know some of those things, and I think the solution, Emily, is if we can keep the Anthem plan as awful and expensive as it's going to be, at least it provides people the comfort that they can keep that choice as they look at other options. Absolutely. And I think that was the lesson from the retiree health plan.
Yep. And we're, I was texting her to see if we had heard this morning. We haven't yet, but we're looking at that. There was one other point raised by Janine about undocumented. I mean, obviously none of us are arguing the importance of health insurance. We want students to have this, but we also don't want it to be a barrier for them getting an education, which would be the thing that could improve their health and options for health insurance in the future. But we're not solving the undocumented problem either way. They would not have been able to be insured, and that's a struggle. I mean, that's something that, as a society, we all need to get together and figure out. But I just wanted to make that clear, that whether we were on the old way or the new way, that's we're not providing an option.
Can I just make one more case for over communication?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is the other. I mean, obviously, some of this is unavoidable, and there's heartburn involved. But it is there's a lesson from the conversations we were having in December in over communication that I think would be wise to apply here.
Absolutely.
I think that I think we have a lot of opportunity around the off-campus resources that could be available to members of our community who are at risk. And I think that the work we did with our Together for Maine initiative in the past year is a good example of the type of, assertive over community. I know, Emily, you get my emails every day, and sometimes I send you fake ones just to be fun. But that sort of work.
Fun.
What's that?
He said he
But,
really
yeah,
does
one
that and
time-
it's fun. But I read them all. That's how he knows.
But if we take that similar approach to, I think this is a really excellent messaging initiative for us. If we work around the resources that are available in our communities, off our campuses, to help our students have the foundation that they need to be successful learners. And whether it's healthcare, rent assistance, heating assistance, it's hard to do well in calculus if your internet's not on at home. And I know we can't solve all things for all people, but when we talk about student success and having that be a priority, there are a lot of resources that we could help people get access to, and kind of normalize the idea that not everyone comes to our campuses with the support at home or the financial standing to be really successful learners without some help beyond what we can offer here. So I'd like to take a crack at that.
Thank you, Dan. Anything else right now on this? Jim?
I guess I'm still not clear on what the path forward is. Are we at a final point that we're just going to communicate better, or I know we're waiting for some information. I'd just like appropriate board members to be kept apprised of every step as this goes forward, so that we don't have another retiree health situation. And that's not intended as a criticism of what's happened so far, but we've just got to have, I think the board has to have real transparency into where we end up and how we get there. So I guess that's my request.
Yes, sir. And so far, right now, we have the communications that will be pending will be going out to all the people who had insurance. First of all, generically to students, to let them know that they won't have to do that waiver process, but directly to the students who had insurance so that they can know their path. We've set up the relationship with the state and the navigators, and we have those hotlines and connections. We're working to integrate the distribution of those connections for new students and students who aren't reading their email, and orientations and other places. So we're trying to make those connections for the navigators. What I was alluding to that we're waiting for word is adding yet another layer on this, where we keep with Trish's recommendation last week, that we keep an option with our current provider that would be voluntary but still at a reasonable rate. And Gretchen is our risk person is working with that company right now to try and see if we can't put that together. We already have students enrolling, so we're a bit behind the 8 ball on that, but we will get that done as quickly as possible. As soon as we hear, I will let the board know.
So if I could, to me, that still leaves open the question, if there's no mandate, then there's going to be a number of students, I don't know what that number is, but some number are just not going to respond, and they're not going to have insurance. And so what is the plan? What is our exposure on the campuses for dealing with those students, which I think Janine was talking about earlier, which is, what happens when you have a student who has a medical crisis? Let's say it's a student who has COVID, and because they don't have health insurance, they hide. I don't know what our testing regime is going to be in the fall, but I just worry about kind of a lack of a net, if you will. For maybe it's a very small percentage, but it still could end up being, it sort of lands in the lap of the campus to deal with.
Understood. We'll strengthen that response for you all and get back with you.
All right, thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay. Robert, I think that you're still up with programs for examination update.
Yes, ma'am. On a little bit lighter note and quick, I wanted to provide a quick update for the programs for examination process as a reminder for those of you who've seen it over the last 4 or 5 years. But for our new trustees in particular, we went through this quickly in the trustee orientation, but I'll just say again that the programs for examination is an annual review of our academic programs. This process was originally introduced to flag really small, low enrolled, or programs that looked like they were in trouble. So when we did the review, it was just a few programs on the list, and that's all we talked about. So those of you who have been around have heard me talk about the expansion of this effort over the last year. So we're changing the process to include all of our programs, making a more holistic look at our entire academic program portfolio. So this process begins each year when the system IR staff pull the base data about our programs. The first draft of this data is delivered to the provosts in August. The provosts then work with their academic departments to vet the data, to add to it, and add other contextual information that's not included in the data. And this stage of data review concludes in November. The provosts then work with the VCAA and their universities to set a continuous improvement plan, is how I would characterize this. So during the March through May timeframe, the provosts then present these plans to the board. So the cycle starts over again for the next year, and you can see that this is a healthy way to continuously look where our strengths are, areas that we need to grow, where there's opportunities for collaboration, where there's opportunities or threats and the like. So 3 universities presented their plans in March. UM and Machias will present their plans at the May meeting. USM and UMF, just due to the length of these and other agenda items, UMS and UMF will present during the July meeting. And I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions on programs for examination? Seeing none, I will turn the agenda over to Rosa for an update on the Student Conduct Code.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. As you all know, and for the new trustees, every 3 years and mandated under board policy, we have a regular review process of our Student Conduct Code. And we knew going into this year's review, we had some important and fundamental work to do. I briefly want to introduce 4 key players and individuals in this work. They've been instrumental in the work with the code, and they've played an extremely important leadership role as we've been walking through it. And they can wave at you. Laura Rodas is the Associate Dean of Students at UMA, and Laura was the chair of the UMS Student Conduct Code Review Committee. Donna Seppi is our Director of Student Success Initiatives for the University of Maine system and works very closely and directly with our student conduct officers. Sarah Mlinarchak, sorry about that, Sarah, is the Assistant General Counsel for the University of Maine system. And Laurel Heil is our Deputy General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer for the UMass. Today represents the first read of the Student Conduct Code. You all will see this again in July at your July ASA meeting. And I'd like to have Sarah lead you through the critical changes. So I'll turn things over to Sarah.
Thanks, Rosa. I'm going to share my screen here so everyone can see the presentation. And I'm going to hope you can all see the correct slideshow and not my view. So as Rosa said, thanks, Rosa. As Rosa said, I'm Sarah Mlinarchak. I'm Assistant Counsel in the General Counsel's Office. And today we are here to talk about the Board of Trustee Policy 501, the Student Conduct Code. So the code is reviewed every 3 years. We have a diverse range of stakeholders that review the code, folks from the system, all 7 of our campuses, the University of Maine School of Law, as well as the Board of Trustees. Specifically, we have heavy involvement from Chief Student Affairs Officers, Campus Conduct Officers, and as well as student representatives to the Board of Trustees. The goals of review. We really work to evaluate and update our policies and practices. We do that by incorporating feedback from the folks, the boots on the ground folks, individuals who are working with students on a day-to-day basis, as well as on conduct matters. And again, these folks are our conduct officers, students, and leadership. In this review, we also formally included the University of Maine School of Law. Now, the law school has always been subject to the code, but they were never specifically written into the code. So we worked to be more inclusive and make sure that that was in there. This review also worked to mitigate legal and risk concerns. We worked to enhance due process. We created a structure that we hope increases consistency among the campuses. And we also work to make sure that rights, responsibilities, and consequences are equally applied to everyone. Some of the key updates in the code. We added a student's rights and responsibilities section. In our violations area, the academic misconduct violations definitions were updated to align with Board of Trustee Policy 314, the academic integrity policy. Formally in the code, we had a section named informal resolution. We changed the name of that section to alternative resolution and built out that section a bit to be more robust and give more description about what could or could not be an alternative resolution. We added in an administrative resolution section. This section is there to allow the conduct officers to quickly address minor violations such as alcohol or noise complaints. And in our interim measures or action section, we've added a hearing. And the reason this was added was to align with case law out of the First Circuit. An additional key update is to our formal hearing process. So after the formal investigation is complete, we've added two potential initial hearing formats. One would be the conduct officer hearing and another would be a hearing board hearing. And it would be an option of one of the two. The conduct officer hearing would be before one individual and the hearing board hearing would be before a panel of individuals. Now the code does lay out when the conduct officer versus the hearing board hearing can be used, and there is discretion at the campus level. However, there are a few matters that should automatically go to the hearing board hearing. Some of these examples are violence against women crimes, the VAWA crimes, such as sexual assault, sexual harassment, stalking, as well as discrimination or harassment cases. As well, any matter that really involves serious physical, emotional, or harm should also go to a hearing board hearing. If a case has the ability to be appealed, then we have two levels of an appeal. And appeals are a paper appeal. It is not a rehearing of the case. The first level of an appeal would be before an appeal panel. This is a body made up of three different people. And then the second level would be a presidential appeal. At the presidential appeal, any of the campus presidents or the dean of the law school would appoint those members from a group of trained individuals. And again, we work to unify the practices and procedures across the university while still allowing discretion at the campus level where we understand different situations, culture, et cetera, may play into practices. We also made revisions in response to stakeholder feedback. Students were very concerned about rights and responsibilities. And so as I previously mentioned, we added language up front at the beginning of the code to describe what those rights and responsibilities are. In response to Board of Trustee feedback, we've added language about criminal law implications, such as if someone has a protective order in a matter or if there's a companion criminal case. In terms of conduct officer or student affairs feedback, again, we expanded the alternative resolution section. We added the administrative resolution section so they can quickly get in there and provide some educational resolution and intervention when needed. And again, we want to maintain that discretion at the campus level while also unifying the practices among all of the campuses. And finally, we've also are undergoing a diversity, equity, and inclusion review. And Megan Clough and her team are currently performing that DEI review. So that's a brief overview of the process, as well as some of our key updates, and happy to answer any questions that people might have.
I've got a question, if I could.
Sure, Roger.
So, and I don't mean to get the discussion off track, but I represented a person at Arno some years ago on a allegation of sexual misconduct, and I went through this process. Excuse me. As I recall it, the process was fairly similar to the one which is in place or in proposed now. And I just wonder how much discussion there's been about this. I was struck by the fact that when there's an allegation of sexual misconduct, that the event itself and the results of this can really ruin someone's life. In the case of the complaining witness, it can certainly ruin that person's or have very negative implications for their life to be a victim. On the other hand, the implications for someone who is found to have committed the offense are very significant as well, in terms of being discharged from the university, in terms of being able to get into some other school and pursue the career that they may have wanted to pursue. The process as it's written only allows the respondent, as I read it anyway, to have present with them an advisor who I expect can be an attorney, but doesn't allow the advisor to play any role. And that's what happened in my situation. I was there with a student part of this process. And so to the extent that there was going to be questioning of the complaining person, the student, in this case himself, had to do that questioning. And I remember so clearly, I was representing a naive 19-year-old kid who had no skills whatsoever when it came to being able to ask questions, who didn't know how to handle himself on those questions. And I was sitting next to him, and I'm trained to do that kind of thing. And not to beat up on witnesses or to berate witnesses, but to help get to the truth of what did or did not happen. And I just felt that was a very, very unfair process if what we're trying to do is to get to the truth. I suspect this has been a subject of much discussion, not only here, but nationally as well. But I just want to put in a word that I find that process to be not a fair process if what we're really trying to get to is the truth. And I don't know if that point of view has been expressed, if there's been discussion about a different way of doing it, but I don't think that this is American due process. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll jump in here if that's okay. I think one of the things that our office would really like to be able to do and has had an eye towards doing as we've participated with folks in restructuring the code, but also more globally, is to have a closer partnership between our office and the people actually implementing the process, right, of various university policies and procedures, whether it's the student code of conduct or something else, which I find as an attorney advising on the process is often where we can have a large impact, right? That there's the structure as outlined in the policy and procedure, and then there's the way it's implemented. So I think with regard to some of the specific concerns you're raising, we have had outside counsel look at the code specifically related to some of these issues around Title IX, where we can have flexibility, where we need to hew very closely to the federal regulatory and legal landscape, which, as I imagine this group knows, is in a state of flux right now. So it's anticipated that there are going to be some changes to Title IX under the new administration that may then require us as a university to update our practices. One of the goals we had, well, let me back up. One of the things we noticed, which is a different nuance of the point you made, is that there were sometimes significant differences in the way processes were carried out at various locations. And from a due process standpoint, that obviously creates issues. So let's just say you represented the person you represented and you got the process you got, and that happened one way, right? But maybe in a different situation, at a different location or at a different time, maybe somebody else was involved in representing a client and they got a different type of process because somebody interpreted and applied the rules in a different way. That obviously creates issues for us as an organization and for the people involved in a very direct human way. So one of the things that we worked with Vice Chancellor Placido and his group on was establishing a unifying individual through the coordinator of students who would help not only unify practice, but also develop a feedback loop with our office to be able to more closely advise on these issues. So I think the goal of this is to substantively address some of the types of concerns that you're addressing. So I'll just try to give you a concrete example, and then in the interest of time, I'll stop talking, but I'm happy to expound on this more. So let's just say that our office was advising on that process and you were advising your client. And in the way the code is structured, that you're allowed to advise your client, but not necessarily speak directly to the group, right? And let's say you said, well, here are the 10 or 20 questions that I think need to be asked in this proceeding that are important to the representation of my client, right? And maybe some of that is even happening in the hearing as it's taking place. What I would like to see is a more interactive process with our office where we would be able to, in all likelihood, make sure those questions were asked and got brought forward. And if for any reason there was some discrepancy or concern about some of the questions, as there can sometimes be in these situations related to trauma, violence, triggering, that we could have a dialogue about that and arrive at a solution that works for the various parties involved. So that's just to give you some quick flavor of the way that I'm hoping we are going to evolve in our application of the rules set out in the code.
As a practitioner, I'd like to also just add on that in the past couple of years, or certainly in the last 10 years, since you had your case, we have substantially increased and improved our formal investigation process. It now includes a written report. All of the evidence is provided and made available to the involved parties where they can review it ahead of time, in addition to, at the hearing as well. And so the hearing is certainly a formality where, questions certainly can and should be asked, but the bulk of the work and the bulk of the inquiry around what did or did not happen is investigated thoroughly in a much more structured way than had been done, at least certainly when I came to the institution about a decade ago. So I think that does help to address some of the concerns as well, because the information is more readily apparent about what are the areas where there's agreement or disagreement. And that can help individuals such as yourself better prepare students to be engaged in the hearing process as they essentially represent their own interests.
Roger, did you have any?
Yeah, just one closing thought. And I appreciate that. And it sounds like you're working hard to make the process more fair. But this is so contrary to me to the issues of due process. And you have due process when something important is involved. And it's hard to imagine something more important than the potential impact on someone's life from the outcome of one of these hearings. And I just want to say, I find that the due process reflected by this to be totally inadequate for someone in my former client's position. And I've said my piece. Thank you.
If I could, I would like to, in my prior life, a private practice attorney and a judge, I second what Mr. Cates has said. I think the right to have counsel and the right to have the counsel represent you. I don't think we want the victim to be questioned by the alleged perpetrator. And if nobody has that right, who's on the other side, then you might not get as true a picture, as good a picture and accurate a picture as you would hope that you would have. Obviously, one goes into these things having compassion for the victim, and that is most often warranted, but an unrepresented alleged perpetrator, as Mr. Cates said, can have their life ruined by a circumstance such as this. Having that language in the policy means that it can be invoked. And if somebody decides to invoke it for whatever reason, the person is without adequate representation and adequate ability to present their case.
So I'll just weigh in here. There's another interesting aspect of the code that comes up here, which is that, for better or worse, the code dovetails with certain other policies. And one of those is Board Policy 402, which lays out, for instance, Title IX matters in greater detail. And so the Title IX regulations, as changed under the last presidential administration, include the right to essentially testimony and cross-examination by an attorney that you're referencing. And so that is encompassed when that process gets invoked. That would not have been in place 10 years ago because that was a change under the last presidential administration. So that piece is in place specifically for Title IX matters.
Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up the whole agenda with this. If that's so, and in the kind of case I was referencing, someone would be entitled to have active counsel, which I think, then why does our policy say something different?
Because the policy says that specifically for 402 matters, you have to look at 402. So
Okay.
that, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
And you know, this is a hard process. As a prosecutor, I've talked a lot about victims' rights under this policy. There's certainly concerns about accused rights. It's an imperfect system, and I appreciate all the hard work that Laurel and Sarah and so many others have in trying to balance everyone's concerns and views. And it's so difficult with the background of Title IX. So thank you all. And Sarah, thank you for taking the time you spent a lot of time trying to educate me on this, and I still feel like I have a lot more to learn because Title IX is complicated and ever changing. So, and I'm sure with Trustee Dobson and Trustee Cates that I'm sure that folks in the legal office would be happy to spend more time with you on this outside this meeting as well, because it is so complex. Do we have anybody from the faculty that would like to speak?
Yes, I had just a point to make about the upcoming Unified Accreditation visit from Netchie next week. I just wanted to, excuse me, I just wanted to express some concerns about the fact, I know it's a tight schedule and there's a lot of people that they need to meet with. And I think that this is a potential roadblock to a unified accreditation, and maybe Netchie and or the UMaine system has to rethink how long a visit needs to be, because it's not just to one campus, it's to an entire system. But I have concerns that there's a lot of opportunities for selected faculty in certain roles to meet with the Netchie representatives. There's only one 30-minute open faculty meeting time. You know, in 2019, when Unified Accreditation was first being considered, all of the trustee faculty reps, some who are still here, some who have since left, we all went to our constituencies and gathered information about what faculty thought about the plans. Some people surveyed, some people had conversations, we collated that information, and it was actually presented to this subcommittee. And many of the concerns that were raised at the time were preemptively addressed by the chancellor's FAQs. But a lot of the concerns I felt at the time didn't get to the full board. And indeed, at the full board meeting where the decision was made to apply for unified accreditation, there was one faculty member that spoke, I believe from the University of Maine, and he was in favor of it, as a lot of faculty are. But I had concerns in the discussion for the vote that there were trustees at the time that said, well, I'm so glad to hear that all the faculty are on board. And I'm like, well, not all the faculty are on board. And then last spring, due to the timing of the application that went in, it's required if you have any public comment to Netchie on any application, it has to be submitted 60 days before the meeting, because there has to be a 30-day time for the institution to respond. And when the UMaine system application went in, there was no 60-day window. So there were faculty that wanted to respond to that in public content, and they were unable to. I know with my own experience with accreditation visits at Umfk, and we're a small little campus, and there was a lot more opportunities to meet with the Netchie reviewers. So I would just say, I know that this isn't our big comprehensive evaluation visit, but I fear that this might set a precedent for a very narrow view from faculty. 30 minutes is not long when we're talking about, I don't know how many hundreds of faculty across all the systems, well over 800, I think close to 1,000. So I just wanted to put that on the record, because some people came to me when they saw that. I'm in another meeting with them on CBE, so I do have some more dedicated time personally, but there are some other faculty that have concerns that all the faculty from all 7 campuses only have a half an hour. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Robert or Jeff, do you have anything you want to respond with?
So I appreciate the important feedback that you've shared, Lisa. You make several points. Your first and your last point connect, and they're on the same subject. So I'll address that one as it's specific to this visit. You're right to say that the structure of the meeting schedule for this visit won't set a precedent for the comprehensive evaluation. That's a much lengthier and more intensive process. For this visit, we have a 2-person visiting team. For that visit, as is standard practice, we'll have somewhere between 8 to 11 or more team members drawn from multiple institutions throughout New England, and probably at least one representative from outside of Netchie institutions. As I mentioned in my update earlier, there are 4 meetings for faculty built into this visit. One, as you note, is for Umfk CBE faculty. A second is an open meeting for faculty system-wide. That's a standard type of meeting for an interim progress visit such as this one. The third meeting is for faculty who are active in multi-campus academic programs. And then the fourth meeting is with the Faculty Governance Council, which, as you know, comprises the heads of senates and assemblies throughout the system who represent their faculties in turn. in the shared governance model we've established under unified accreditation. So without any disrespect at all to the point that you're making, which is an important and valid one, we have built in within the constraints of a smaller scale interim visit 4 different opportunities for faculty who are active in different areas of work across our institutions to meet with the review team and to share their views. And so that's what we've put together at this point, and we think it well represents the conspectus of the work we're doing, and does provide all faculty with at least one opportunity and several faculty with multiple opportunities, including through their governance council, to interact with the review team. I don't know if Robert would want to add anything to that.
No, that was fine. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, thank you. And I will ask, is there any student rep that would like to address the committee?
I don't think we have any students with us today, Lisa. They had to leave early.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, that at least concludes the agenda that's in front of me. Unless anyone objects, I will call this meeting closed, and thank you all for your attendance.